staying on top of the ladder is bloody hard work. Staying in that top four is hard work. When it doesn't matter what era you've played in, the fact is you get two chances to play and you've had your chance, now it's the time to make a grand final. Once you make a grand final, I think the preliminary finals are the hardest game ever. Once you made a grand final, at least you can either, win, lose or draw it. You've had your chance, but not making it is worse.
This is Legends with Bevo. Thanks to Anytime Fitness Glenelg, Renelec Electrical Services, Tiger Tennis, and SMS Gas Installations. And now, here's your host, Bevo.
Well, 5-time Premiership superstar, Brownlow medalist, I'm a Celebrity Get Me Out of Here contestant in 2020, and as well, a Bet Odyssey ambassador. The man's done it all. Dipper, great to have you on Legends with Bevo. What a pleasure.
Well, what do I say? Thank you very much, Bevo. Nice to be on the show, and thank you for reminding me how good I was.
You still are, mate, let's be honest.
Oh, I am, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're a superstar. Everyone loves you around Australia, and
thank you.
We'll get to your experience on I'm a Celebrity in a moment, but we have two huge prelims this weekend. You're a man that knows a lot about prelim finals. On Friday night, We've got the Cats taking on the D's, and of course, My Mighty Power taking on the Dogs on Saturday night. Let's start with the Friday night game, mate. Who's your tip and why?
Oh, geez, I think Melbourne have really matured this year. I think they are really understanding exactly where they're at the moment, and there's a lot of support for Melbourne to do well. And, Geelong's a lot of pressure on them, obviously being another final and lost last year's grand final. And look, at the end of the day, I'm going for Melbourne. I think Melbourne are really at the right peak right now. Got some really terrific players back, forward, and in the middle. Obviously with Petrarca going. Petrarca reminds me a little bit about myself, the way he goes about it, and just the way he's just got a lot of energy. And there was a moment in the game last week when it was quite tight, when Petrarca was stuck on the boundary line. Most people would have gone, out of bounds, whatever. He just stood his ground and just sort of fought off two or three players. He got the handball out, and they got a goal out of it. So I'm thinking Melbourne for that one. And
on Saturday night, as I mentioned, it's the Power hosting the Dogs. Obviously, the Dogs a bit banged up, and the Power cherry ripe after a week off.
Never exclude a team that is hurt. We all know about that. Like it's like an animal. An animal will come up and get you when you think it's hurt. They're a very good side. They're a side that will never give up. Poor Power have been just terrific this year, haven't they?
They sure have.
Ollie Wines, who I've known since about 14 years of age, he's just really had a terrific season. They've been winning the games without Charlie Dixon really dominating, and we know how good he is. And Port Adelaide, are ready to make a stance. And I think it's a bit hard for the Bulldogs to fly into Adelaide, go to Perth, and fly back out, and then go back out again. So I'm going for Port Adelaide there. I think they're ready to make a move.
Good man. No, I agree with you, mate. An absolute credit to the Bulldogs for winning on Saturday night, considering they've been like the Leyland brothers travelling all around Australia. But I feel as though I think Port's cherry ripe.
Yeah, but how good? How good, Bevo, the last couple of years, the way these players have been able to go in these hubs. The thing about a hub is the fact that, when you're a young fella, you haven't got any family or whatever. I mean, not family, but married or so. It's sort of like a bit of a footy trip. You live in hotels and bits and pieces. But the older guys are finding it hard away from their families and what they've been able to, sustain, keep playing football and that. So, it's really, really hard being in these hubs. And congratulations to the AFL and all the teams and all the clubs to make sure that this game keeps going, because we love our footy. It's just kept us sane, of course, the last couple of years with this terrible COVID and what's been happening between the borders. But, I just put my hand up to these players and go, well done. And, grand finals are grand final. Some say, oh, this is not a real grand final or whatever. But I'll tell you, I think it'd be tougher to play the way they're playing and playing all different states and all different conditions, as they do anyway. But being away from home has really, affected a lot of the players.
Absolutely well said, mate. I think the AFL deserve credit, the players, everyone that's been involved to keep the season going 2 years in a row now. And you're right. It doesn't matter if it's in Perth, in Tassie, in Brisbane, regardless, in Melbourne, where the grand final is. Flag's a flag. So,
no. It does matter. I know you're an Adelaide boy. The MCG is just bare. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I live near the MCG. I love the MCG. I was born on the MCG. I've played on the MCG. I've parachuted into the MCG. I've hot air ballooned in the MCG. I've helicoptered in the MCG. I've played many grand finals in the MCG, but it's empty. And that's something that we want to make sure we get back to it. Congratulations to Perth. Congratulations last year up in Brisbane. But if they're the only places that we can go and play our game, at least our game is still being played.
Yeah, well said, Dips. And even as an Adelaide boy, and I think a lot of people, everyone knows that MCG is the home of footy, and we love seeing a packed house over 100,000 at the G, and even the players want to play at the MCG as well. So let's hope next year things are back to normal again. And so I'm tipping, I guess you'll go for the D's for this year's premiership then, or do you think Port, can beat Melbourne if they?
No, I think Port and Melbourne have been the real two mature teams this year. Melbourne's got a lot of pressure on them. I mean, the pressures, and so was Port, because, everyone's expected Port to win a final over the last 2 or 3 years. And Melbourne's been that team that's saying, you guys are really mature now, away you go. And they've just fallen short of it. But this year, staying on top of the ladder is bloody hard work. Staying that top four is hard work. When it doesn't matter what era you've played in, the fact is you get 2 chances to play. And you've had your chance, now it's the time to make a grand final. Once you make a grand final, I think the preliminary finals are the hardest game ever. Once you make a grand final, at least you can either, win, lose, or draw it, and you've had your chance. But not making it is worse,
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there. Last year, the heartbreak that Port suffered by losing by a goal to the Tigers, I think it's going to push them even further this year to go obviously to make the grand final, and then I think they're good enough to win it. Anyway, moving on to modern footy versus, the great era that you used to play in, Dipper. How do you find modern footy watching it these days? Because you speak to a lot of legends and they find it a bit hard to watch with the number of players around the footy and not as high scoring. But what's your thoughts on it?
Bev, I've been involved with AFL football now for nearly 40, I can't believe how long. But, I've been in game development a long, long time. I've done Auskick for the last 16 years, as an ambassador trying to get the game going. And now we've got girls team, which is absolutely fantastic. And, I've travelled this great country. I reckon I've been to about 5,000 different footy clubs, promoting the great game. And I helped GWS with Sheeds. We were 2 years before GWS started, promoting what football is, AFL is all about in Sydney, in Canberra, and now look at them, they play in the grand final, they've got over 35,000 members. Time changes and we got to move with it. Now, back in the 80s, loved playing that time. Who was to know? I started in 1975 as a young boy and, I played through the 70s, the 80s and the 90s. So, I've had a great opportunity and then work on the boundary, obviously, for 10 years, whatever, get to know all the players and then been involved in game development. So, I'm up to date with all the players. I know, where they are and who their parents are, and and it's just been great. But the game has moved on. There's no doubt about it. These players have to move with the game every year. It's just not one rule. It's 2 or 3 rules. How I could play standing on the mark without doing anything, I doubt if I could do that, right? If it's talk about the 80s, the 80s were good, hard football. It was suburban football. Even in Adelaide, like in South Australia, Gannell versus Sturt, or Norwood versus the Bulldogs. It was just hard, great suburban football, and you played on a Saturday, and that was it. But today's football, these players, they're athletes. School level has to be pretty good. They train 24/7, so it's a great game to watch. I think it's come back a little bit. A lot more high marking, a lot more long kicks, and not sort of just creative backline floods and things like that. But the game's evolving all the time.
And let's go back to the 80s and 90s, and
Hello, there you are.
Back in 1989, you played in what a lot of people, and I certainly agree, is the best grand final of all time, and I don't think it will ever be beaten, Dipper. It was unbelievable. The Hawks versus Geelong, it was so brutal, high scoring, it just had everything. And at halftime, Alan Jeans gave you guys an interesting speech, which obviously inspired you onto the 6-point victory over the Cats. What did he actually say to you, though? Because it was something that very, very random from what had been heard. So,
Bevo, you're asking the wrong person, mate. Because at halftime, I was knackered. I was in the toilets, just not understanding what was going on with me. I was like, my voice was like this, and thinking, what the hell's going on? My body was imploded, and I'm thinking, what the hell's going on with me? And we find out later I had a punctured lung, and my voice was getting cut off because I had no air in me. And
you had broken ribs as well, didn't you? The same.
Well, broken ribs was in that means it was punctured lung, and ended up. But the story, as I understand, is the fact that what does a great man like Alan Jeans, who has Dunstall, Brereton, Tuck, Langford, McGuinness, Buchan, all these great players. You can go for Johnny Patton, of course, and of course he got knocked out before halftime. He doesn't even remember the game, Platts, but he talks about this boy who had to go to a wedding. His mother gave him $20. He said, now what you got to do, you got to go and buy yourself a pair of shoes. Now he thought, you know what? It was actually $40, my apologies. You know what? He went to his shoe shop, and it was a great pair of shoes, like handmade by this Italian genius and whatever. I just threw that one in, the Italian boy. But they were $40, right? But there's another pair that looked the same but wasn't made with such precision, and so he thought, and they're $20. He thought, you know what? I'll take the $20 shoes. Mum doesn't know, and I'll have the $20 in my pocket. This is Jeansy saying this at halftime. In the ground, under the ground of where the Richmond rooms back in those days at the MCG. He said the young boy bought those shoes. He thought he did the right thing. All of a sudden, the shoes fell apart. And one he sat on the footpath saying, well, I can't go back and buy another pair of shoes, and then you should have paid the price. Pay the price today, and tomorrow look after itself. Pay the price today. And then when he said pay the price, I remember the players, standing up and going, let's pay the price. And, who knows? Who was to know the grand final was ending, and so many injuries on both sides, and so many players did their thing. Gary Ablett Senior kicked 9 goals straight, and it was just one of those games you'll never forget.
No, I think I've watched it about 10 times. It's unbelievable.
Oh, really? Right,
yeah,
okay.
So brutal. Obviously, Ablett with his 9 goals, like you
brutal,
said.
Yeah.
Ablett getting you, and then we saw Yatesy getting Dermy. There was just so many big hits, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah, there was, and what we felt was the fact that Geelong really came at us really early, not just football-wise, but physically. And we thought, if they're trying to physically put us out with me, myself, Dermot, Jason, Michael, Tucker, the others, you're ringing the wrong bell, son, because the more you push us, the more we go for it. But there are 3 words that you don't want to hear on grand final day in the middle of the MCG. And it will happen again and again, and it's happened before. And those 3 words are, it's yours, Dipper. Because when you stand under a ball at the MCG, because this ground, MCG, Bevo, will make you or break you. Doesn't matter how many times you play in it. You'll always see someone who'll come out a hero, or someone who should have or could have or done something. We always remember Jezelenko, you beauty, or we always remember, Phil Manasseh's run, all these great runs that we've had. And
Leo Barry, you star.
Leo Barry, you star. He flew across the pack and took that mark.
Yeah.
The MCG will make you or break you, and that's a great part of this great game of ours,
And a question that you may or may not have ever been asked before, Dipper, I'd like to know myself. Back in 1991, when you decided to retire, what was the first day of retirement like? What did you actually do? Sit down and have a couple of beers, reminisce on your career?
No.
What was it like?
No. It was really strange because in 89 when I played the game or whatever, we won the grand final. It was the first ever Hawthorn back-to-back. So that was a great part of our lives, We played 7 grand finals in a row, right? 7 grand finals. So we didn't win back-to-back ever, except for 88, 89. So it was a big job for us to make sure that we won that game against Geelong because, 83 we won, 84, 85 we lost, 86 we won, 87 we lost, and 88, 89's first ever Hawthorn back-to-back. So in 1990, and so I came back because I had so in 1990, Alan Joyce took over. In 91, I was crooked throughout the year. Remember, Johnny Platt and I were in the same hospital having the same operation of all things on our wrist. And the last 6 or 7 weeks, I only played one senior game that year. And the last 6 or 7 weeks of that, all I did was dedicate my body and my soul and my mind to playing the grand final. And the boys got to the grand final, and I wasn't picked to play in the 91 grand final. I was really disappointed. I was really just really disappointed about finals, and I was fit and was ready to go. And anyway, time moves on for all of us. And the next day, I rang Lee Matthews. I was really pissed off. And Lee being a great teammate of mine and captain, whatever, and he was coach of Collingwood. I rang him. I said, I can't believe I'm not picked. I was really cheesed off. It was John Keeney, myself, Peter Swab had missed out. And you know what? I thought, no, I'm going to go to Collingwood, So I rang up Lee. I said, Lee, go Dipper. Hello, Dipper. That's the way he talks, I said, Lee, they're not playing me in the grand final. He goes, I want to come over to Collingwood. He goes, I don't want you. I said, what? No, I don't want you. I said, mate. No, he said, no. It's not that I don't want you. I can't promise you, games and whatever. Look at you. You're fit. You're ready to go. You've had a great career. You're a one-team player. I know you're angry at the moment, but time moves on for all of us. And I said, you know what? If you don't want me, well, that's it. So I retired the next day after the grand final. I said to my wife, I said, okay, that is it. I'm out. And best advice I've ever had, I've become a boundary rider and involved in football for 10 odd years and still involved in football today. So it's amazing how sliding doors, Yeah. So the day after, I was, as soon as you make that decision, and the players will know this, it's just a lot of relief. There's no more training. There's no more pressures about you can't be here, you can't be seen there, you can't. But back in the 80s and 90s, we're at the pubs and having good times. There were no phones, thank Christ for that, eh?
Yeah, exactly. And the boundary riding, you did a great job with Channel 7 working with the best commentators of all time, like your Rexes and Bruce, Dennis, and who can forget Neil, g'day guys, Neil Curley on the boundary there with you as well.
Neil Curley and I become great friends, obviously, but he's like a father figure to us when we joined up. And I did that for nearly 12, 13 odd years, loved it. It was pretty, working with Bruce and Sandy Roberts and all the guys. And it was, we travelled Friday nights at the MCG, Saturday nights was either Sydney or the Gabba, or Sunday the Gabba or Sydney. And they were the times when we were building the game up as well. So, I've had a lot of say in it. And, it's been great.
And as I mentioned at the start of the show as well, you're involved with I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here last year.
Yeah, I love it.
What experience is that like, mate? And how'd you find all the challenges? Because some of them are absolutely crazy.
Oh, the challenge is the easy part because COVID is, is sort of the first year of COVID was pretty tough because we didn't really know what was going on and we all got locked up, especially in Melbourne. We were locked up for 6 or 7 weeks and then I ended up going away and I had to quarantine for a couple of weeks, then go on to the show. And I just loved it. I love the challenges, love the people. Every day, you're doing something different. But if you weren't doing the challenges, you're in the camp. And if you're in the camp nearly 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days in a row, and someone like me, very hyperactive, you're going crazy. So, and they knew that and they played on that. So, but no, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Yeah, it was terrific.
Did any of the challenges scare the shit out of you? Like, just go, oh, bloody hell, that's hard.
There was a couple of challenges where I had to eat some spiders. So, that was pretty cool. But I reckon the main one was because we had to do it. It was Greg Dinion, myself and Simon from Gogglebox, and we had to drink pig's blood, 2 fish balls, eyes, so 2 eyes, 2 fish eyes, like salmon eyes, big ones. We had a rat's tail. There was, and the 3 of us make sure that we had it together. So that was really good. And actually, I loved it. Yeah, we had so much fun. We had, football comes into it because we trained every day. We had great times I had Travis there as well, talk about footy. No, I loved it. Love to do it again.
And before we get to Bet Odyssey, which you're an ambassador for,
sure.
Just a couple of quick ones. The funniest teammates that you've ever played with at the Hawks and why?
Look, I could go through 18 years of John Keeney Jr. He's a rat bag. Johnny Patton's a rat bag. Dermot's a rat bag. They're all rat bags. Everybody trying to pull the wool over everyone's eyes, all I tried to do one day, well, not one day, it was a bit of a promotion. I made some labels for cars, Dipper for skipper, and I put them on all the cars. No, I didn't get one vote. Anyway.
Were there any good pranks that you could share from your days at the Hawks, or?
Oh, no, there's pranks. I mean, there's all different type of pranks. There were players who left things in people's shoes. There were players like, I just couldn't go through them all.
And your toughest opponent and why, Dipper?
I get that question asked a lot. Those are great times playing against a great player. I mean, playing on the wing. I went from halfback flank. I played on Jesolinkos and these great players. I even played on Graham Corns when he first came over, and Malcolm Blight. I mean, what champion players they'd been. Then I went on to the wing. Your Mullane, Rhys Jones, Merv Nagels, these sort of players. So, but Dougie Hawkins would have to be, not just the hardest opponent, good mate of mine as well, but he could run, skip, hop and jump. But, he was such a funny bloke to play against. We played against each other 16 times. I reckon he beat me 15 out of it, but I got in one preliminary final and I just loved it,
I actually interviewed Dougie last year. You're right. Like yourself, just a real character of the game and a fantastic bloke. Gives his time of day to anyone. So
no, he's a lot of people forget how beautiful a player he was, So all good.
Now let's talk about Bet Odyssey, mates.
Bet Odyssey.
I'll get you to get in front of your banner.
I'll get in front of my banner. There we go. There you go. Anyway, Bet Odyssey. That's what TV. That's about TV. That's how we work.
I love it. So good.
Yeah, it is good.
So tell us all about it, mates, and your involvement as the ambassador.
Well, I'm ambassador of a new game changer in a tipping platform. We're going to go worldwide. At the moment, we've got horse racing, but we'll go into greyhounds and trot, but also basketball and AFL football. And it's not a betting service. It's a free service. It gives you an opportunity to stop reading the paper and going through what horses or what player has been this or missed that play, missed that barrier, or what player hasn't played for a while. We'll give you all the stats. What you can do is just put your own criteria in. So if it's horse racing, I'll go, I love great horses. I love the number 9, of course. I love Damien Oliver. I love this barrier. And it'll come up with all the stats. So on your phone, it'll just come up and just say, guess what? In your criteria, there's a horse running in Perth or Queensland. So it's just an easy process and it's free. So all you got to do is go to Bet Odyssey, get the app, load it down, fill in your name and address, and it's free. And it's not a gaming platform; it's a tipping platform. So, and I've got every week. If you can just see here, where are we? Where are we, Dipper? There you are. So Dipper's Lucky Dip will give you an opportunity to see what my criteria are. And, it's a way of picking your own winner. So good luck. Just download Bet Odyssey, cost you nothing, and we'll have a lot of fun.
And outside of Bet Odyssey, mate, obviously you guys are in lockdown over there in Melbourne. Hopefully you'll be out very soon. What else are you doing outside of that?
Well, unfortunately, with the entertainment world that we're all in and that sort of stuff, a lot of functions aren't happy, especially around the grand final week, and which has been always very popular for a lot of the ex-players and that. But no, like, I've got my hands in a few businesses and, just trying to make ends and hopefully that we can get Australia opened up and get your jabs. If you're a jabber or not, it doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, you've got to get those 2 jabs. If we can get this country opened up, we need it. We need to get face to face.
We do, mate. We need to get crowds back at the footy again. Pack out the MCG and pack out Australia. And just one final question: as a big 12th man myself, or 12th man fan myself, the tight shorts controversy, Dipper. You and Platts were involved in it, and your voice goes very, very high.
Yeah, the 12th man, very, very funny. I think the first time he said, "Who's that bloke with a choco name?" So that was the first one, and then the way that you pack your lunch. So he's a very, very funny man, and we miss him dearly. But that's entertainment, and look, if you can get, look, Australia at the moment, what we need is we need to get back to back. We need to get back to our friends. It's just time wasting that we're sitting at home. Think about what we're going to do. Zoom meetings are awesome, but we all love doing things live and, get people entertained again, get the footy out there, get the kids go and play sport, because the last couple of years, kids have finished playing sport, which is just terrible because of the fact that I came through an era where sport really allowed me to be who I am today. It opens so many doors for you and it teaches you a lot about your own resilience, about your own personal, welfare and that. So let's get Australia open, eh?
Absolutely, mates. And one final question, my great producer Rory wants to know: what advice would you give hopeful athletes who'd love a media career like yourself? So post their career, what advice would you give them, to go into the media, Dipper?
There's nothing promised to you. Everyone wants to be a commentator. Everyone wants to do this and that. Just be good at what you are good at. Obviously, your background. And, if you get the opportunities, go for it. Absolutely go for it. It takes a lot of time. A lot of people work hard to get there, but a lot of players get an opportunity to go and do what they do. And some are good and some, aren't so good.
Love it. Great advice. Thanks so much to the crew at Bet Odyssey for teeing up this chat. Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure, Dipper. Thanks so much for your time, mate. Love all your work and look forward to speaking in the future.
Now, Bevo, what does that say on your shirt?
It says Legends with Bevo. So, I'm speaking to a legend today. So,
yeah, well, you are. To be a legend, you got to know a legend, and I am a legend. All right?
Absolutely. Thanks,
See you, mate.
Take care.